If we don't make a deal with Canada, we're going to put a big tariff on cars, could be a 50 or 100%, because we don't want that car.
The American automotive industry is undergoing an unprecedented transformation as major automakers decide to abandon the country in search of new opportunities in Canada. Former President Trump's tariff policies have dealt a heavy blow to the industry, causing car prices in the U.S. to rise, with some models potentially being pulled from the market. This not only creates economic instability in the North American auto industry, but also leaves Detroit, once the symbol of the automotive industry, eerily quiet with the absence of factories that were once bustling. Will automakers find a way out? Or will the U.S. face a crisis in this industry? Watch the video to learn more. If you agree that tariffs have negatively impacted the auto industry, leave a 1 in the comments. If you have a different viewpoint, feel free to leave a 0. Enjoy the video, like, share, and make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with more exciting content. The U.S. automotive industry, one of the country's economic symbols, is facing a deep crisis. Major players like Ford and General Motors, GM, are pulling out of the market, largely due to the impact of tariff policies imposed by the U.S. government on other countries. However, the situation is not just about the decline of major corporations, but also about a flawed strategy that has increased production costs, pushing the auto industry into a difficult situation. In recent years, U.S. tariff policies, particularly those targeting countries like China and the European Union, EU, have had far-reaching effects on the auto industry. While the initial goal of these policies was to protect domestic auto manufacturing and encourage consumption of local goods, the reality has been far from expected. U.S. automakers like Ford and GM face high tariffs when exporting cars to other markets. This not only reduces the competitiveness of U.S. cars, but also significantly increases production costs. While the government hoped these policies would protect jobs and boost domestic production, the reality has caused significant difficulties for major players in the industry. The high tariffs on exports have reduced profitability and forced companies to reassess their production strategies. The U.S. car market is showing a noticeable decline. Sales are sharply dropping, especially as consumers trend toward spending less and switching to more fuel-efficient vehicles, such as electric cars. U.S. car manufacturers are facing fierce competition from foreign rivals, particularly from Japan and South Korea, where production costs are much lower than in the U.S. Although U.S. automakers have a long tradition and prominence in technology, they are struggling with external factors beyond their control. This has led to unavoidable losses. Ford and GM, giants in the automotive industry, are experiencing revenue declines due to the pressure from tariffs and ineffective production strategies. Soaring production costs are not only making it difficult for companies to maintain profitability, but are also making U.S. cars less appealing in global markets. Another important factor to note is the shrinking market share of U.S. cars in the global market. In the past, U.S. automakers held a significant share in the global auto market, especially in countries like China, where car demand has surged in recent years. However, the decline in competitiveness of U.S. cars is causing manufacturers from Japan, South Korea, and Germany to dominate the market. These factors are not only affecting automakers' revenues, but are also making it increasingly difficult to maintain manufacturing facilities in the U.S. Without the right strategy to tackle this situation, major U.S. automakers may face a significant reduction in market share, leading to unpredictable consequences in the future. The tariff policies initially aimed to protect jobs in the auto manufacturing sector, ensuring that domestic companies could compete with foreign manufacturers. However, the reality is that these policies have not only failed to achieve their goals, but have also backfired. Rather than protecting workers and boosting domestic production, these policies have increased production costs for U.S. automakers. Companies are forced to pay higher prices for imported materials and parts, raising the cost of production and making U.S. cars less attractive to consumers. A key lesson from this situation is that applying excessive protectionist policies without a sustainable development strategy can lead to the opposite of the intended results. Instead of safeguarding the domestic industry, high tariffs are driving companies to face rising costs and weakening their competitive edge. The most important lesson that the U.S. auto industry must learn from the current situation is the need for a flexible and sustainable development strategy. Protectionist tariff policies cannot replace innovation and creativity in technology, nor can they enhance competitiveness in the global market. To revive the U.S. auto industry, the government and companies need to work together to find long-term solutions, such as developing electric vehicles, adopting advanced production technologies, and minimizing unnecessary costs. Another important suggestion is to create a more business-friendly environment for automakers, allowing them to compete on equal footing with international rivals without bearing excessive costs. At the same time, policies supporting workers in the auto industry should be prioritized to help them adapt to changes in technology and the market. Ultimately, a combination of reasonable protection and encouragement of innovation is key to helping the U.S. auto industry recover and thrive in an increasingly globalized world. In conclusion, the U.S. auto industry is facing many challenges, but if it can learn from past mistakes and implement the right strategies, it can recover and reclaim its leadership position. Ford, one of the long-established giants of the American automotive industry, is currently facing worsening financial conditions. Although it has been a symbol of the U.S. auto industry with its long history and strong brand, the impacts of tariff policies and rising production costs have weakened Ford's global competitiveness. Ford's forecasts indicate significant losses in the coming years if they continue to maintain production in the U.S. To address this, the company has decided to shift a large portion of its production to Canada, where labor and material costs are lower. This move aims to reduce costs and maintain competitiveness in an increasingly tough automotive market. Ford's pullback from part of its production activities in the U.S. is not only a sign of shifting production, but also a major warning about the future of the American auto industry. General Motors, GM, and Chevrolet, two of the largest American automotive brands, are also facing financial difficulties and a decline in global market share. In particular, GM has had to make the decision to close several production plants in the U.S., leading to thousands of workers losing their jobs. These changes clearly reflect the challenges American automakers face in the context of high tariffs and rising production costs. GM and Chevrolet's factories, once symbols of the American auto industry, are now a major concern for thousands of workers. The plant closures not only affect the workforce but also impact the local communities where these factories are based, reducing income and disrupting the local economy. This is one of the most visible consequences of applying protectionist tariff policies without considering the negative ripple effects. Overall, major U.S. automakers, including Ford, GM, and Chevrolet, are struggling to maintain operations in the U.S. market. While these names have dominated the global automotive industry for decades, they now face fierce competition from international manufacturers, as well as difficulties caused by tariffs and rising production costs. These companies are forced to change their production strategies, shifting part of their operations to countries with lower costs, such as Canada or Mexico, to alleviate financial pressure. However, this means reducing production and jobs in the U.S., leading to serious consequences for the domestic economy. Moreover, the withdrawal of these American automotive giants also reflects a lack of flexibility and insufficient preparation to handle fluctuations in the global economy. The global automotive market is changing rapidly, and U.S. companies need to adopt more effective strategies to maintain competitiveness and recover. Otherwise, these companies will continue to lose market share and face severe declines in the future. From these changes, we can draw an important lesson about the necessity of a flexible and sustainable development strategy. The U.S. automotive industry needs to not only improve productivity and reduce production costs, but also reassess how to compete in an increasingly globalized environment. Protectionist tariff policies, while they may provide some defense for domestic industries, are not enough to ensure long-term sustainability. American automakers must find ways to innovate technology, strengthen international partnerships, and develop products that align with global consumer trends, such as electric vehicles and self-driving technology. It's not just the automotive giants in the U.S., such as Ford, GM, and Chevrolet, that are struggling with financial issues. Foreign automakers like Nissan, Subaru, and Stellantis are also facing a serious crisis. While these brands may not be the largest in the U.S., They still hold significant influence in the industry and have made substantial investments in the American car market over the years. Nissan, a well-known Japanese brand, has long established manufacturing facilities in the US, becoming one of the key automakers here. However, the company has also been hit hard by tariffs and rising production costs. Additionally, the decline in demand for certain Nissan models, along with changing consumer trends, has reduced its competitiveness in the US market. Similarly, Subaru and Stellantis, automakers originating from Japan and Europe, are facing significant challenges in an unstable economic environment. Subaru, known for its durable and fuel-efficient vehicles, is struggling to maintain stable sales as competitors in both the US and global auto markets continue to develop. One of the most visible signs of the crisis is the shift in production by these companies. Nissan, in a strategic decision to minimize financial losses, has chosen to cut 20% of its production capacity at US plants. This means that a significant portion of Nissan's US automotive production will be reduced, leading to lower output and substantial revenue losses. This decision by Nissan clearly shows the difficulties foreign automakers are facing in maintaining efficient production and competitiveness in the US market. Not only Nissan, but Subaru and Stellantis are also struggling. Subaru, with its stable-selling models over the years, has also had to reduce production at its US facilities. While the company still maintains a solid position in the family car and SUV segments, the declining demand has prevented them from maintaining their previous production levels. Stellantis, the multinational automotive group formed by the merger of Fiat Chrysler Automobiles, FCA, and PSA Group, is also experiencing a decline in production activity at its US plants. Despite Stellantis' efforts to restructure and change its production strategy, the volatility in the automotive industry and unstable economic factors have significantly impacted the group's performance. One of the most severe consequences of production cuts and shifts is the direct impact on workers. Thousands of employees at Nissan, Subaru, and Stellantis plants in the US have faced job losses. This not only affects the direct workforce in the automotive manufacturing sector, but also triggers a decline in related industries such as parts supply, after-sales services, and transportation. Nissan has had to carry out staff reductions at several production facilities, creating a wave of unemployment in the area. These workers have not only lost their stable jobs, but also face difficulties in finding new employment in a labor market that is becoming increasingly scarce. Similarly, Subaru and Stellantis have also been forced to cut their workforce to maintain profitable production. The reduction in production capacity means that these companies no longer require as many workers as before, and many employees have had to leave their jobs. The current situation shows that the US automotive industry is facing challenges not only from domestic companies, but also from foreign automakers. Nissan, Subaru, and Stellantis are all facing significant challenges due to reduced production and rising costs. Meanwhile, thousands of workers are facing job losses, increasing instability in the US economy. The lesson to be learned from this situation is the necessity for more flexible economic and production strategies in the face of rapidly changing global economic conditions. Automakers need to find ways to minimize costs while maintaining competitiveness and sustainable growth. Seeking alternative solutions such as investing in new technologies, developing electric vehicles, and optimizing supply chains could be key to helping the US automotive industry overcome this difficult period. One of the most visible and noticeable consequences of the crisis in the US auto industry is the sharp increase in car prices. As manufacturing companies face rising material costs, tariffs, and disruptions in supply chains, car prices have skyrocketed. This not only affects manufacturers, but also creates a significant burden on consumers. Consumers, especially those in middle and low-income families, are facing major difficulties when it comes to purchasing new vehicles. With prices significantly higher than before, many are forced to delay their purchases or turn to used car options. This not only makes the new car market less attractive, but also reduces demand for premium models or electric cars, which previously had a much stronger demand. The increase in car prices also leads to other consequences for related industries. After-sales services, car insurance, and operating costs are also rising, making owning and maintaining a car more expensive than ever. In a context where many people's income cannot keep up with living costs, this creates economic stress for a large portion of consumers. Another serious issue that the U.S. auto industry is facing is mass unemployment in automotive manufacturing plants. As automakers cut production to deal with rising production costs and declining demand, thousands of workers at Ford, GM, Nissan, Subaru, and Stellantis plants have lost their jobs. These workers are primarily employed in manufacturing, assembly, and parts supply for automotive companies. Job loss is not only a personal financial loss, but also causes a major disruption in the communities where these plants operate. Large automakers often have a strong presence in suburban and industrial areas, where many workers depend on the auto industry to sustain their livelihoods. When plants close or reduce production, the impact extends beyond the workers themselves to affect local services such as restaurants, stores, and support industries. Areas with large automotive plants in the U.S. are now facing severe economic and social decline. Regions such as Detroit, Michigan, and areas in the South and Midwest, once major automotive manufacturing centers, are now severely affected by the shrinkage of the auto industry. As plants close or reduce production, thousands of workers lose their jobs, and local services struggle, leading to a decrease in income and quality of life for residents. In addition to the direct impact on workers' income, these communities are also facing a reduction in local tax revenue. Cities and towns where large auto plants operate rely on tax revenue from the production and consumption of vehicles to maintain public services such as education, healthcare, and transportation. When companies cut production and workers lose their jobs, these revenues decrease, leading to budget shortfalls and a decline in the quality of public services. Moreover, the decline of the auto industry also affects the community's psychological well-being. These areas, once proud of their contribution to the national economy through auto manufacturing, are now facing instability and anxiety about the future. The sense of loss is not only about jobs, but also about the identity and heritage of these communities. The crisis in the U.S. auto industry is not just affecting manufacturers, but also having a widespread impact on workers and consumers. The rising cost of cars is making it harder to own and use a vehicle, especially for those with lower incomes. At the same time, thousands of workers are facing job loss, leading to economic and emotional tolls on the community. Regions with major automotive plants are also bearing the consequences of this industry's decline, with diminishing income, quality of life, and social instability. The lesson to be learned from this situation is the need for more flexible and sustainable economic strategies to maintain and develop the auto industry. The government, companies, and communities must collaborate to create a solid foundation for transforming this industry while ensuring stability and prosperity for workers and consumers. If you agree that the U.S. auto industry needs flexible and sustainable strategies to ensure stability for workers and consumers, leave a 1 in the comments. If you have a different opinion, feel free to leave a 0. Keep watching the video, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated with the latest and most useful information. One of the most serious problems the U.S. auto industry is facing is the disruption in its supply chain. U.S. automakers, which have long relied on a global supply network to provide parts and materials, are now struggling with difficulties caused by high tariffs and trade protection policies. Tariffs on imported goods, especially automotive components, have increased costs and created difficulties for domestic manufacturers. The U.S. auto industry has developed based on a global supply chain model where critical parts and components are imported from countries like China, Japan, and various European nations. However, with the imposition of high tariffs, U.S. automakers now face delays in sourcing parts, disrupting the production process and driving up costs. The reliance on foreign suppliers not only makes the U.S. auto industry vulnerable to external disruptions, but also forces them to compete with international rivals who enjoy cost advantages. Tariffs on imported components are a key factor contributing to the increase in production costs in the U.S. auto industry. U.S. automakers, which depend on imported parts to assemble and manufacture vehicles, have historically benefited from lower-cost parts that reduce overall expenses and enhance the competitiveness of American-made cars in global markets. However, when tariffs are imposed on these parts, production costs increase significantly. For example, Parts such as engines, suspension systems, and electronic components, which are typically imported from countries with lower production costs, now face high tariffs, increasing the price of cars. This not only reduces manufacturers' profits, but also raises car prices, placing a heavy burden on consumers. Furthermore, the increase in production costs diminishes the competitiveness of U.S. cars globally, particularly against rivals like Japanese and South Korean automakers, who benefit from lower production costs due to lower or no tariffs. Additionally, tariffs on components increase production time, as companies must either find new suppliers or invest in domestic production, which is both costly and time-consuming. This not only lengthens production cycles, but also leads to delays in delivering new vehicles to consumers. This directly impacts demand and customer satisfaction, particularly in a market where international competitors can offer cars at lower costs and faster delivery times. To address these issues, the U.S. auto industry needs to seek solutions to restructure its supply chain, reduce reliance on foreign suppliers, and boost domestic production. One potential solution is investing in new manufacturing technologies to lower production costs and improve efficiency. Additionally, companies may consider forming strategic partnerships with domestic suppliers or suppliers from countries with more favorable tariff policies. Furthermore, the U.S. government could reconsider its tariff policies, particularly concerning auto components, to help reduce the burden on domestic manufacturers. A more reasonable and flexible tariff strategy would help protect the U.S. auto industry without driving up production costs and car prices excessively. In the context of globalization and fierce competition in the auto industry, maintaining an efficient and sustainable supply chain is critical to the success of the U.S. auto industry. While tariff policies may provide short-term benefits in protecting domestic production, they cause long-term negative impacts on the supply chain and increase production costs. To address this issue, automakers and the U.S. government need to find flexible solutions, from investing in manufacturing technologies to restructuring supply chains and adjusting tariff policies to be more reasonable. The U.S. automotive industry, once a symbol of national pride and strong economic development, is now facing a challenging future. Major automakers such as Ford, General Motors, GM, and many others are struggling to maintain their position in the global market. The American dream, which these automotive giants helped build a solid economic foundation for over the past century, is now under serious threat due to the changing global economy and external factors. Ford and GM, names synonymous with the American auto industry, no longer hold the leading positions they once did. While foreign automakers like Toyota, Honda, and Volkswagen continue to thrive, American giants are grappling with declining market share, lower revenues, and difficulty maintaining production capacity at their factories. Tariff policies and rising production costs have further complicated the ability of these giants to remain profitable. The future of the U.S. automotive industry is becoming increasingly unclear as these companies struggle to meet the fast-changing demands of the market and the technological revolution. The transition to electric vehicles, self-driving cars, and green technologies presents a significant challenge that U.S. automakers have yet to overcome, with international competitors already one step ahead. The future of the U.S. automotive industry is also heavily influenced by the global downturn in the car manufacturing sector and the U.S. government's tariff policies. Foreign competitors from Japan, South Korea, and Europe are surpassing the U.S. in the race to produce cars thanks to more reasonable tariffs and smart production strategies. These foreign companies, with lower production costs and greater flexibility in adapting to changes, are steadily dominating the global market. Meanwhile, U.S. automakers face major barriers due to the government's tariff policies, which increase production costs and make it difficult for them to stay competitive. High tariffs on imported parts and components have raised product costs, making American cars less attractive in international markets, especially in developing countries where consumers tend to opt for more affordable options. Foreign automakers, particularly those from Japan and South Korea, have maximized their advantages in production costs and business strategies to quickly dominate the global automotive market. Companies like Toyota and Hyundai have succeeded by offering high-quality products at affordable prices, while also ramping up production of electric vehicles and green technology. Meanwhile, U.S. automakers have fallen behind by failing to meet the growing demand for fuel-efficient and environmentally friendly vehicles. The U.S. automotive industry is at a critical crossroads and needs to undergo significant change to maintain competitiveness and recover. A technological revolution and new strategies must be implemented to help U.S. automakers catch up with global trends. Transitioning to the production of electric vehicles and adopting advanced technologies like self-driving cars will be key to the industry's revival. U.S. automakers need to invest heavily in research and development of new technologies, while also building strategic relationships with international partners to expand markets and reduce production costs. Adopting new technologies in manufacturing will help reduce reliance on imported parts and lower overall costs for the companies. Additionally, the U.S. government's tariff policies should be reconsidered to create an environment where the domestic automotive industry can grow sustainably without being hampered by external factors. A flexible and reasonable tariff strategy will help U.S. automakers maintain competitiveness in the international market and lower production costs. The future of the U.S. automotive industry isn't necessarily bleak if companies can adapt to technological and market changes in time. The industry needs a revolution to recover and grow, from transitioning to electric vehicle production to modernizing manufacturing technologies. Companies must invest in the future and create products that meet the demands of modern consumers. Despite the many challenges, the U.S. auto industry still has opportunities for recovery and growth if it can harness the power of technology and changing consumer trends. The key is for the industry to start acting now, not just to protect jobs and economic interests domestically, but also to maintain a strong position in the global automotive market. The U.S. automotive industry is currently facing an uncertain future. The challenges it is encountering are not only external, such as fierce competition from international rivals and tariff policies, but also stem from a lack of flexibility in adopting new technologies and consumer trends. Without timely and decisive change, the U.S. automotive industry could continue to decline, losing significant market share and potentially falling behind in the global race. The downturn in the U.S. auto industry may also signal a weakening of other key industries in the economy. Industries such as steel, energy, and technology, which are heavily dependent on the development of the auto industry, could face similar challenges. A decline in auto production reduces demand for steel and other building materials, while delays in adopting new technologies could affect the technology sector. The U.S. economy must prepare for major changes across various fields, as the downturn in the automotive industry could have a ripple effect on other sectors. The future of the U.S. auto industry and the broader economy requires significant change and innovation. If you found this article helpful and want to continue following in-depth analysis of critical issues in the industry and economy, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. These issues will directly affect our lives and jobs. So let's learn and take action together to create a better future.